Well, welcome right into the studio. You got Josh Carey here. You're tuned into another episode of Prototype. You know, it's the show where we dig into the minds of innovators and trailblazers to figure out how and why, and sometimes even what. Prototype, as you know, is defined as the original something in which others are often copied or duplicated. And we bring on the best and the best to fill that slot and alert you onto what you need to know into the world of innovation and leadership. Today, we're joined by Rich McMahon, who is the founder and CEO of CDA Ventures, which is a consulting and advisory firm to some of the biggest brands you know. Welcome to the program, Rich.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with innovation, because I saw who you are and what you're doing out on the socials. And so I have an impression, but paint the picture of what to date the majority of your career was spent doing.
And, for the most part, as you kind of described, my career has been built on kind of transforming and innovating businesses. And so I grew up on the tech side, right? And so was always looking at how do you leverage technology to enhance people and processes, right? And back from my days in consulting through to my 17-year span with Bed Bath & Beyond, it was about launching, transforming, innovating businesses. How do we use technology and capabilities to rethink the way that we do our business?
So you use the word technology twice in that description. What is the connection and relationship? Is that a must? Is that where it begins and ends?
It doesn't have to. I just happen to have grown up on the technology side, and I find ways to leverage technology to drive innovation. And I do think that they go hand in hand nicely. And I think that they're very complementary to each other. It doesn't have to be, right? You can innovate in a business process. You could change the way you think. You can reapproach the way you go to market. You can reapproach the way you operate a business and innovate. But using technology, I think, oftentimes expedites that process. And so leveraging technology for innovation, I think, is a common occurrence in this day and age.
What does it really mean to drive innovation?
Driving innovation has a lot to do with getting an organization aligned on a strategic vision for change, for what you want to be, how you want to evolve your business, and then getting the organization behind that so that all aspects of what you're doing within the organization move towards a common goal. And I talk about that a lot. It's really about setting that strategic vision for what you want to do with the business. But the differentiator for me as to who innovates, who executes well, are those that not only can set the vision, but then they can execute on the vision, right? And execution is a big differentiator in driving innovation.
Do you think that all leaders are innovators, or is that something that must be brought into their traits?
I think it has to be brought into their traits. I think some people are innovators and leaders. I think some people are leaders but not innovators. And I think sometimes there's innovators that are not leaders, right? I'm a believer in kind of a team environment where you need people to play different roles. So you can have someone who is a very creative thinker who can think out of the box all the time. And quite frankly, there are some people that I've worked with who one time strike gold and they come up with a really creative, innovative thought process. That doesn't mean that they necessarily are leading the efforts. Sometimes it's a matter of them rethinking something, saying something that triggers someone else who might be in a leadership capacity to say, wait a minute, that's a great idea. And then how do we take that? How do we set the vision, align the organization, and move down the path towards delivery?
So you spent 17 years, you said, with Bed Bath & Beyond, with a focus on innovation. Can you give me a specific example of something that you did that was innovative?
Sure. In today's day and age, everyone in retail and consumer talks omnichannel. right? You know, they talk about, hey, how are we delivering and integrating both what we do online and within our physical store environments? Way back in 99, we launched e-commerce for Bed Bath and Beyond. We were, you know, we created a great platform. We launched an omnichannel solution at the same time. So we started off wanting to give the stores access to see the e-commerce site. I didn't want a customer to be on the site, go into a store and say something to the store manager, hey, I saw this on your homepage, and the store manager not to have any visibility to that. We then evolved that towards, within a year or two, we evolved that when we wanted to bring in a new product category. We brought in fine china for the company. We knew we weren't going to carry that inventory at every store. So it was more of a hub and spoke kind of design. A primary store was the hub, and then the stores off of it had sample product. But we wanted to allow, in particular because of our bridal registry business, we wanted people to be able to buy that. So we leveraged that platform, that omni-channel platform that we had delivered, and created an early stage of being able to bridge between online, offline, and a direct-to-consumer fulfillment model. And so part of that innovation was we innovated across all of the stores that we were not only taking orders, right? So a store could either be out of stock on an item, or they may never have carried that particular item in their store. They were still able to service the customer, fulfill their order to them. That order went into the ether of our e-commerce order fulfillment model and got fulfilled direct to the consumer. So back in 99, 2000, 2001, we were very early on in innovating to think about how do we leverage our inventory wherever it sits in the business, right? Those people that are in retail know it's an art and a science to figure out what product to put where and when to make sure you service your customer correctly. You're never going to always be right. So this model really allowed us to start leveraging our inventory wherever it was, to service our customers. It allowed us to create a higher level of customer service for a customer. If a customer came into a store and they were looking for a $3,000 coffee maker, and that store was a more moderate store and didn't carry a $3,000 coffee maker, there's no reason why we can't service that customer and deliver to them. So that technology was very early on. And we did that through my career there, whether it be omni-channel capabilities, when we launched our mobility capabilities, when we launched and transformed our supply chain from kind of a direct store LTL-based model to a pool and consolidate. We used our people, our processes, and our technology to really transform the way that we operated the business. And that allowed the business to scale from when I joined at about $1 billion scale to a $12 billion company running multiple divisions. As we all know, that hasn't ended up so well in recent days, right? As Bed Bath & Beyond filed for bankruptcy, but we had a lot of years of tremendous growth and capability. But again, to your point on innovation, you have to keep innovating. And that's part of what I think occurred, right? The innovation didn't keep occurring. And when that stops, the business doesn't evolve, it doesn't move forward, it doesn't stay aligned with where your customers are. And therefore, then you end up having other issues.
Let's make this applicable for a minute to the brand, the business, the person listening. Innovation can, I'm imagining, come from multiple departments, right? It's not just top down or otherwise, right? Everyone can and should contribute. Is there a difference between being innovative and being creative, or is one part of the whole?
I think you need creativity to be innovative. You could be creative and have an idea, but it may not really transform and result in innovation, right? So there are a lot of, and I saw this as my role as chief strategy officer for the company. Part of what we did is we went out, we set kind of overarching themes for where we wanted the business to go, how we were going to evolve and grow. And then we worked with the teams kind of on a tops down, bottoms up to kind of do that. There are times that the teams would come up with great creative ideas that would make sense at some point in time, but may not have made sense to work on then. right? Because there were other priorities that were delivering more innovation, more return on investment than those. So you could be creative, you could come up with ideas, but those ideas also have to be applicable, right? They have to be able to be implemented. It's true of, I say this with, my last 8 years, I've worked with a lot of startup businesses. You can have a great idea. You could have a very innovative idea, but if you can't execute, if you can't deliver, if you can't bring it to market, if you can't deliver, that idea is just an idea. It's a creative idea, but it doesn't get to the point of what I would define as innovation.
And how do you define that in this context?
For me, in this context, I would say innovation is really not only the creative idea, but it's your ability to execute on that idea and deliver it for the business.
So
Right?
yeah. So you
I was
can
just gonna say,
have,
an innovative idea is great, right? I could say years ago, I used to put together lists of songs to make little cassette tapes of music. And I had the idea, wow, we should try to digitize that. So I was creative, but I certainly didn't innovate the market because I didn't deliver the iPod, right? Which was precursor to the iPhone. So depending on how old you are, you'll remember that. So, again, you can have creative ideas, but in order to innovate, you have to be able to execute and deliver on that idea, in my view.
yeah. For all the startups that you work with, you advise, you consult, is innovation a necessary component for success?
I think at some level it is, right? A product has to have some differentiation in order to work, right? In order for it to be meaningful within the market, whether it's a product or a service, there needs to be something that is a differentiating factor with it, right? And so for the startups that I work with, that's some of the discussions that we have, which is, okay, why do we exist? What problem are we trying to solve in the market? Why are we here? And then trying to align that, okay, does that deliver something? And it could be innovative in a lot of different ways. It could be innovative just from the fact that maybe it takes an existing business or process or business segment and flips it on its head. You look at what happened with the razor space, right? It could be, hey, we're innovating, we're differentiating because we're going to produce same quality product at lower price point. Right? All of a sudden, is that innovation? I would say yes. I would think that the creativity and the innovation that they executed on was to rethink that space. And so I think that exists across the startups that I work with, which is, again, why do we exist? What problem are we solving within the market? And then how are we differentiating ourselves from what our competitors are, if there are competitors in the market, and how are we then communicating that message and executing on that in order to deliver that innovation within the market?
How have you found that companies could, because in order to do this successfully, there has to be a culture of innovation inside. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So how have you found that they instill this culture?
There's no silver bullet on creating and instilling culture in my experience, right? But it needs to stem from everybody on the team. It needs to start with your leadership, right? Your leadership needs to not only say the words, but they need to demonstrate that. And I'll give you a good example. And I had a post on this recently. I talked about intellectual curiosity, right? To me, leadership needs to be creating an environment within and a culture within the company of asking questions, looking over each other's shoulders, not being afraid to ask someone a hard question, right? I think that's part of the problem that happens with companies is that eventually the leadership says, I know all the answers, so I don't necessarily need everyone's input. So here's what we're going to do, right? And to me, that's the beginning of the end. Right? At Bed Bath & Beyond, we used to talk about this all the time. I've said this before, but we used to bring in our store managers when we were growing. We were opening 85 plus stores a year. We would bring in new store managers, and it was all a promote from within culture. So these were people who worked in the company, et cetera, and they would come in. And when I first started at Bed Bath & Beyond, I was the CIO for the company, the Chief Information Officer. And I used to give them a tour of, we built out a beautiful new data center. We had big TVs and monitoring, and we were monitoring every device throughout the company. And I go through that, and they would see all of that, and they'd see the millions of dollars that we spent on managing the business better. And they'd come back, and I can see in their faces that they were like, wow, that's impressive. And I would always end the conversation and the presentation with, whatever you see, no matter how much we spend, it doesn't matter if when you're standing in front of a customer, the technology doesn't work right to help you service your customer better. So if the screen is moving too slow, if it's glitchy, if you can't find something, then we're failing, right? We worked off that inverted pyramid perspective of the person closest to the customer was the person most important in the company. And so instilling that culture, I think, starts at the top. You have to have an openness and an intellectual curiosity. You have to make sure that people understand that that's the environment you're operating in. You have to reward them for having ideas, creative thoughts, challenging the status quo. You can't penalize them. You have to let people try and fail at times, right? You hear them talk about, fail fast. You have to iterate through that. And if you create that culture, then I think it really supports it. And I think that's where it gets across the model, where you can create a culture within the company, whether you're a small startup with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, or you are a large organization. I don't think it's any different. I think that same effort of setting the tone, engaging with people, letting them know that it's good to be vocal. We want them to be vocal. And then creating that and supporting that so that when someone is vocal, they don't feel like they get their wings clipped.
So you spent 17 years as CIO of Bed Bath & Beyond, as you said.
So my role changed. So I evolved. I was CIO. Technically, I was CIO for the first 8 years, but I launched our e-commerce a year after I started with it. Then I took over supply chain 2 years after that. And so, then I became chief strategy officer in 2006, so about 8 years into it. But I still managed IT. I still ran supply chain. I was responsible for those functional areas, just was evolving my role and realm of responsibility.
So decades in traditional C-suite. And now, in part, you founded CDA Ventures, an advisory and consultancy firm. Why? Where was that going?
I had kind of run my course with Bed Bath, had a great time, great experience there, loved every minute of it. I thought directionally we needed to go in a slightly different direction than the CEO was going. And, I'm a big boy, and I said, I'm going to go and explore other things. I started CDA originally. I was doing a level of angel investing in a variety of startups, and I wanted the legal shield of any level in case that there were issues. And then that evolved quickly, where if I'm going to invest my money, I want to be a good steward of my investment. And so I became advisor. I became a consultant for a number of firms, and that kind of evolved towards more people asking me, "Hey, you have great operational, strategic background. Can you help us think about how we're going to market? Can you think about how we can run our supply chain more efficiently? Can you help us from a technology perspective on reinventing how our technology supports our business so that we can grow faster?" And so it kind of evolved more into the consulting aspect of the business. And I've done that for a number of years, both as kind of a fractional C-level. And then more recently, have taken on more work with clients where I've started to actually staff people on projects. And so people who've worked with me or that I know from within the industry, spanning all different functional areas, where I have clients who have needs, I'm now bringing those levels of expertise to the table to help clients across the board, strategically, operationally, and digitally.
So the person listening in who wants a little nugget of advice, what do you see over and over that needs to be corrected, that there are blinders on from the entrepreneur, business person, or executive that you help them tweak?
Yeah, that's a big question. I don't know if there's one nugget per se, except that you have to keep innovating, right? The common theme that I see with each of the companies that I'm working with is that, they've grown good businesses, right? They're either starting out or they've grown it to a reasonable size. They might be a mid-market company. If they don't have that mindset to keep saying, how do I get 1% better every day? Right. And I'm taking that line. I work with a guy that, he runs an executive coach business, and that's what it is. He talks about being 1% better every day. So the question is are you getting 1% better as a company every day? And how does that translate itself? So for me, that could be as simple as, hey, we have multiple distribution facilities and we're going to consolidate them, and we're not really sure exactly what we want to get done there. Can you help us in that? So, okay, great. Let's sit down and lay out, what do we need to get done? Let's get a plan in place, and then let's execute that. Let's make sure we're aligned, we have the resources, et cetera. And I deal with that with a lot of companies that are either starting out or of scale and are trying to take on more strategic initiatives, which is oftentimes people don't think through where they are and where they want to get to. And that's always been a skill that I feel like I brought to the table, having come up through technology. I always felt like I can quickly understand the business. I understand technology and some of those other capabilities to then be able to say, okay, we're at point A, we want to get to point Z. How do we get there? Right. And then what resources do you need? What work streams do you need to create out of that? And then aligning the organization, communicating that, getting people aligned towards, this is what you have to do to execute and deliver on that, and then helping them deliver on that promise.
Can you give me an example of how me or somebody could get 1% better? What are some of those actions so I know that I'm in that direction?
Yeah, you know what? I think that has a lot to do with, thinking every day. Again, it starts on the weekends, which is really, again, as you know, life and work to me is 7/24, right? There is no off switch. It's not a 9 to 5 job anymore. And this is true for a lot of young people. I talk to my kids about this. It really is about constantly thinking and evolving. What do I have coming up this week? What's on my schedule? Okay, what prep work do I have to do? Hey, I'm meeting with Josh today. What prep work do I need to do? What do I need to think about that? Now, I don't have to, you told me, hey, you don't have to prepare, but part of that is just getting my thoughts organized and saying, okay, how do I organize, as I know we were going to talk about innovation. And so I think that has a lot to do with it, is just being very present and conscious about what am I doing? What am I coming? And I think that's how you start to get 1% better. I mean, you can then take that through to, hey, all right, I'm working on I work in a warehouse. I'm trying to operate more efficiently. How do I tweak what I do to get 1% better today? Right? How do I pick one more order that I might not have picked yesterday? Or if I'm working in technology, how do I deliver one better solution? So, again, it can transform itself at any level. But I think on a broad basis, I think it starts with you just starting to think about, how do I get 1% better? I think if you just started with that, you'll find you'll start to get 1% better, because you'll be putting the thought process into, where am I? Where am I trying to go? How do I get there?
Yeah, I love that. So it's a mix of mindset and strategy, technique, and execution.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
and it
Very
also,
well put.
yeah, and it also includes organizing systems and processes, right? Because I know that the creatives and the innovators and the forward thinkers, I'm speaking for myself, really. I'm more of that side, always been less of the analytical system and process. But more recently, I've realized that, if I want to improve on exponential level, I have to get that system and process in place. And lo and behold, I see the result. I'm like, well, my goodness, it actually works.
Yep. Yep. You're 100% right. And I think too, and I tell people this all the time, you have to understand your strengths and weaknesses, right? And so if you're really creative, you may not be analytical, or you may never want to be analytical. But then I tell people, well, then you have to find the synergies with people who can complement you, right? It was one of the things when I would recruit people that I looked to do, right? I would try to understand where I thought people's strengths were when I was hiring them, and then understand, all right, they might be a little deficient here. How do I support them? And I did this for myself. As I progressed in my career, a lot of what I did was really looking at, there were some things I was good at, and there were some things that I knew I was not as good at. So how do I complement myself with people around me to deliver on the things that I'm not as good at, and then how do I leverage those people to learn how to be better in that area. And then you evolve, right? So surrounding yourself with top level, high performing, A+ people, and then have that intellectual curiosity to say, how do I get better? What do you do that, Josh, you're great and you're creative and you can run. How do you do that? If I want to do something like that, how do you do it? And then how do I learn from that to then apply it to how I can deliver, something in my life?
When you're dealing with your clients, startups, founders, what is that one trait that they need to really probably reduce that's just getting in the way? Is there a trait or something that they're doing?
I think it varies based on where they are in their kind of that journey. I think for a lot of startup people, sometimes it's being able to let go and delegate, understanding I'm really good at these things, and I may be even better than anyone else with these things, but sometimes those things need to be pushed to someone else to get done to allow me to elevate myself to that next level. And I say the same thing, like I describe this from my own career, right? I evolved at Bed Bath & Beyond during 17 years and took on a lot of responsibility, in large part because the CEO gave me opportunities and pushed me for that. But I think partially because I was very aware if I wanted to move up and move ahead, I needed to make sure that I backfilled. I need to have I needed to have great people around me in order to allow me to elevate. Because if you try to elevate and you haven't built the platform of the people and the capabilities, you're going to constantly be pulled back into it. And so building those capabilities allows you to elevate and take on more responsibility, which allows you to drive more transformative, innovative growth for your business.
In your adolescent and teenage years, were you just the younger version of this Rich McMahon, or did you grow into this?
You know what? You'd have to ask my brothers and sisters. They'll probably give you a different perspective on it. But I think to a large degree, it's probably similar. And some of it just came from, I had a great mom and dad, who were very involved. They were both very successful in their own right, and they were very family oriented. They were very connected, and so but they were very driven, and they taught us about internal drive. So my brothers started a lawn business when they were like 8 years old. I think I got recruited when I was 9 to join them. And we were charging $12 to cut a grass and trim, and they paid me $1 to trim. I mean, I'll tell you one story with my older brother, who I remember I did a really bad job of trimming the one day, and I said, "Well, what do you want? I'm getting paid $1." And he made a comment to me, and it goes a little bit to your point. He made a comment to me that it's the little things that make the difference for the customer. Anyone can cut the grass, but it's the edging and the trimming that differentiate how good their property looks versus what someone else might do. And so things like that through my years of growing up were very impactful, whether I knew it or not at the time. They were impactful towards the idea of how do you understand where those little things are? How do you improve that? How do you differentiate what you're doing versus what someone else is doing in order to do that? And I think growing up in a strong family, my mom was one of 11. We had aunts and uncles. They were always around. And so it was very supportive network, and allowed me to be a little bit free to be creative and try and do things. And for me, the innovation, I was always, my father was very artistic. He did a lot of package design work for Avon through his career. And I took private art lessons for a long time growing up. And, I think that I was always kind of left brain, right brain, kind of thinking, how do you be creative? How do you, think differently about different aspects of what you're doing? And that just applied as I got into business, and I think got applied in different ways to help me be successful.
As we wrap up here, put your superpowers into your own words so the person listening knows that they are in the right room.
I'm not sure what that means to have superpowers.
What is your strength? What do you do very well?
I think as we've talked about a bit here today, I have a pretty good ability to go in and assess a situation understand it, be able to break it down, to think about it systematically, and then create a plan to figure out how to go forward. And so for me, it's always come a bit natural, and that's even from a tech. One of the things with tech, right? It was an ability to go in and work with business people who may not have understood the technology, but be able to understand their business jargon, understand the technology jargon, and be able to bridge those capabilities. And again, it goes towards, okay, here's what we want, here's where we are, here's what we're capable of. How do we get to the next stage?
And wrap this up into a nice bow and soundbite, Rich, the theme and everything we're saying that the listener needs to hear today to go on their day.
I think, again, strive to get 1% better every day. Be creative, think about transforming your business, and drive innovation. It's just like this whole show that you do, John, right? It's great bringing innovative thoughts for people, right? And ideas and concepts, and you have to take those things and apply it. You pick and choose things as you learn, and then you apply it towards innovating your life and your business.
There you go. Rich McMahon, the founder and CEO of CDA Ventures. Get in touch with him, connect. You see what it's about. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, this is Josh Carey for Prototype, the original of something, right? Where other things are often copied or reproduced. That's what we're going for here, powered by Proto Hologram. If you can't be there, beam there. Proto Hologram innovation allows you to be wherever you are in the world, live beaming in to wherever you need to be. Check it out. Check Rich McMahon out. We're going to do it again real soon. Thank you for tuning in and spending your time. Take care. Be well.